So, March Madness. I guess a few may have watched it. I've been watching it a little bit because the Arkansas Razorbacks, my team, has been moving on, even though last night was pathetic. They won because the other team missed their last second shot. But at the beginning of the game, if you watched any basketball, you would have seen, or you will see, or have seen, a technical called. Last night, at the beginning of the game, the coach, right off the bat, technical. He was yelling, screaming, hollering. He was all over the referees. And they teed him up. So why do you suppose he got a technical, especially that early in the game? You probably don't have any idea why, and I don't either, really, details. But let me ask it a different way. If they had not been keeping score last night in the game, would he have gotten a technical?
Probably not.
Not likely. So that's the lesson today we're going to go over. It just kind of something to get you to think about it, because we don't want to worry about the score if we're God's children. And I'm going to try to change up until I get the right. Don't worry about the score. That is our lesson from Harold Shanks, Loosening Your Grip. And so Harold has a very good, I think, thought about how to approach this subject, and he talks about the Beatitudes. And in fact, let's go ahead and turn over to Matthew 6 about this do not worry passage. In chapter 6 of Matthew 25 through 34, let's read that. If I could get two readers, 25 through 27 for the first one, and then 28 through 34.
25 through what?
27.
27. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more important than food, and the body more important than clothes? Look at the birds of the air, they do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to his life?
28 through 34.
And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore do not be anxious, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them all. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Therefore do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble.
Thank you. In studying this passage, the author found himself thinking about people back in that century compared to this century, and how they had sandals. What do we wear? You know, on our shoot, we have great footwear. We may get ours from somewhere in Mexico. They make their own. They cook on open fire. We may cook in a microwave. And it's kind of like comparing a donkey to a car back then to us, and how well we have it. Our lives do seem easier, don't they? So before the passage there that we just read, up in verse 19, Jesus talks about storing up treasures in heaven is a comparison. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, and it's verse 19 there. The Galileans couldn't carry, or they basically could carry a lot of their items, their things, their possessions, earthly possessions on their back. And how would that compare to today? If we tried to put what we have in our truck or car, it'd be almost impossible. I've got to go to Harrison, Arkansas today to do some work down there in the land, and I've got my back just full, and I don't even have hardly anything that came out of my house, just a few items. So there's no comparison if you're talking about back then and now. And so it's kind of like, okay, do we have too much? Or are we, should we feel bad about this? He says that Jesus means it's not to save, to put a burden on us, our thinking about planning, like for college savings, things of the nature of helping others to, do things and even take care of what we have. We have insurance for everything. So it's not that Jesus is saying you should feel bad necessarily because you have these things. He's got a different point. Matthew 6:26 says, "Look at the birds of the air. Are you not more valuable than they?" Matthew 6:30 says, "If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, will he not much more clothe you?" Does that mean our wardrobe should just stop, with a shirt or two or three, dresses, few dresses? Can we have more than 2 pair of shoes? Should we buy expensive clothing? So he answers that in verse 33 of chapter 6. He says, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." It's not that we have to make sure that we only get a minimal amount of things in this life. It's not that. It's more about what we are doing with our life. That we're looking at God's kingdom and our priority is Him. And He can provide everything else that we need. But He wants our priority to be Him. There's another person keeping score in Matthew's text. It says in verse 25, notice the words more, or the several times, 25:6 and verse 30. In verse 25, "Is life more than food, and the body more than clothes?" Verse 26, "Are you not much more valuable than they?" In verse 30, "Will he not much more clothe you?" If we are keeping score, then we can win because we're on God's team, and He's already won that life battles, and He knows what we need, and He can provide it. So I want you to think about this, and we'll talk about it maybe at the end. If you can recall a time in your life when you knew without a doubt that God was unexpectedly providing for you, just something you knew, you couldn't figure out why it all came together, how it did, but it just did. God took care of what you needed. Be thinking about that. I'll ask you at the end for some thoughts on that. So there's 3 important things about giving up control that the author talks about. You could consider these helpful hints of life. And one of them is just enjoy the blessings. Simply, the writer says he finally realized why this text was so difficult. It was because it was hard to manage it. The reason was because he wanted to control how much control to give up. He wanted to be in charge of letting God be in charge. He wanted to dictate how God dictates how he should live. So see if you can relate to these questions. Excuse me. He asked himself about control. Number 1, can I live in a nice house and have 2 cars? Another question, is it okay to buy insurance? Another one, should I feel guilty about having nice things when others don't? Does discipleship mean selling everything I have? Is it wrong to have a savings account? So, in keeping those things in mind, the author says, he suggests this is what Jesus wants and the questions that he has. Can I live in your house? Can I be with you in school? Am I with you at work and at play? Where is your treasure? What is most important to you? Do you understand that you are more valuable to me than any plant or animal? That's what he was talking and comparing things to, the plants and the animals. Do you trust me? Do you trust him? Do you seek my kingdom first? How many of us have just fallen into that? I'm scared. I've reached the end of what I know to do and how to take care of whatever the situation is. And maybe we forget to trust. That's something that he expects and we sometimes overlook it. Harold says that Jesus wants to know who is in control. Once you understand who is Lord in your life, then you're free to enjoy the good things in life. You can enjoy what He gives you. Sometimes we maybe think we can't enjoy, what God gives us because we feel uncomfortable that others don't have what we have, and that we are really rich and shouldn't feel real good about that. So we'll talk more about it. Do you have a nice house? He says these are the answers that he gives according to Ecclesiastes 5:19. It's a gift of God. Enjoy it. In Ecclesiastes 5:19, moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possessions, and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy in his work. This is a gift of God. I don't know all your situations about your work, and I know many are in school and so forth. That's work as well. I've been in different positions and different jobs in IT for over 25 years, and I really enjoyed the challenge, the learning that I had to do to be able to bring things under control. In my first job, I didn't know this at all. I just knew I had to work as hard as I could to make sure I learned and got on top of things after I got the opportunity. And a while longer, maybe a year longer later, a lady came up to me or approached me. We were talking, and she said something about how I had brought a system that was chaotic. When I first got there, I didn't know it was. I was just learning and doing. And you guys could do the same thing. It was just organization. But it made me feel good that I could do something that helped that whole company in that department. People were losing reports and different things that were happening that I didn't know until I was told later on that I was just doing my job. But it made me feel good and accomplished to be able to do that. Now, I've changed so many different ways, and now I don't even do computers at all, just practically. And I get a lot of enjoyment out of fixing a door that's wop-jawed, it's just off or it's not shutting. And that's physical. You guys, some of you do labor like that. I don't use my mind as much, but then I have thought about, I have to design that, so I am using my mind, but I'm using my hands. And I get just as much enjoyment out of using my hands as I did when I had to learn and use my mind. I'll have to be honest. Now, it may be because of my age. I got tired of having to learn every operating system that came out, every antivirus that was good or bad or whatever. But it's right for you to enjoy your work. It's a gift of God. And I expect there are a lot of things in your job that you won't enjoy, and that's okay. And God didn't say we had to, just enjoy every aspect of our work. He didn't guarantee it. But it is something that you can, and you can do that over time, especially I hope and pray that you will. Should you put away money for the children's college education? The answer is yes. As God gives you money, it's good to give to others from those blessings. Paul said this in Acts 20 and verse 35. It is more blessed to give than to receive. So we're getting something stored up, savings, so that we can give for our children, whoever. That's not a bad thing at all. And so God is the same God, and we sometimes overlook. I know I don't think about it and compare it to the real people that were back in the old days, the Old Testament. Solomon, David, all the people that were wealthy, very wealthy. You just think about all those riches that Abraham had. So he's the same God, and it is my life, that I have to get under control of God, and that's the main point he's wanting to make here, and it's very important that it's the order that we're placing things. It's not the amount of what we have necessarily. Now, I'm not saying that you want to accumulate, but it is something that we can be thankful for and appreciate if we have things, because we can give because of those blessings and use those in the right way. You know that not everybody who has nice things has God, controlling their lives. That is a fact. In fact, I would probably venture to guess or make a bet that most Christians don't have it in God's control rather. But if you've given control to God, don't second guess those rewards that He sends us, because that's just a blessing. The second thing he talks about that's important about giving up control is letting God change your goals. So we have goals in our lives, and we have direction, and we know what we want to do. Maybe after we get out of school, we know what we're going to do. We're doing those things. But are you open to allowing God to make changes in your life and changes in what you're doing with your direction? And he says this about the goals. Seek first the kingdom of God. If we want change in our life that brings about change for God, then that's number one. And this lesson that Philip had today was going to be very good. It kind of goes along with some of this, that we're putting God first in His kingdom and not what we want. So he gives an example of successful business people. These are people that he's known throughout his career, and there's more than I'm probably going to tell you. I'm sure that, but there's a couple of them. One of them's a business person that he wanted to go into consulting, and now this was not a financial help decision, but he wanted to do it so that he could devote more time to missionary work, to train missionaries. And so he sacrificed some of the money that he was making independent consulting, or doing the business as he was before the independent consulting changed. He just changed to be flexible. He had more time so he could do more for God. He gives another example of a doctor friend who is a man that has a beach house, and he gives that house away about 50 weeks a year. He typically looks for people that are in need, but it could be a couple that are a honeymoon couple, young couple.
I think we're in need.
So let's raise our hands for that beach house. So it just makes you realize that there are different ways you can use what God gives you. If He's blessed you with that doesn't mean that you have to hold on to it and make it just you and yours, but it is a blessing to bless others. So that's what this man did. He found people that couldn't afford a vacation, and he helped them out. He could show up at their house and give them a key. So his generosity was reflecting what was in control of his life. God was allowing him to be able to give because he knew the priorities in his life, what really made him happy, And that's something you'll find out as you mature and grow. And I think I have in many ways. No, I'm not perfect. I don't know what exactly that would be to be completely in alignment with God and His control every second, every minute of my day and time. But at the same time, I have learned a lot because of experiences that I've gone through, financial hardships somewhat. I'm not saying I've ever been in a really bad situation where I lost my home and so forth, a bankruptcy, but I had enough pressure and stress that I could say that if I had kept that pressure and stress on me like I had everything to do with it, instead of giving it over to God and letting Him deal with it, then I could have had health problems, a lot of different things that could happen. And if you learn that there's only a certain point, amount that you can do, and let God take care of the rest. That's all He asks, is just let Him be in control. And that's what this whole book is about, this chapter is about. And, keeping score. We don't have to keep score. He's got it taken care of. God knows how to win the game of life for us if we're on His team. And God wants us to win and to have good gifts. But He doesn't want us to be controlled by those good gifts. And so if we have anything that's controlling us, our thoughts and actions, that's not what He wants. So if we believe that the final score depends on the way we play the game, we'll never give up control. You know, we can't do enough things in this life to reward ourselves to where we get to the goal of heaven. It's not ever going to happen. We can use what He's given us and enjoy the challenges that He gives us and let Him be in control. And if things work out to where He blesses us, then bless others by it. And that's just it's a great feeling to know that no matter what happens, that if hardship comes your way, that God's got this. And that's the main person, the main one that needs to have control of our lives. So, we'll only receive this promise when we give Him control. Let me ask you now that question about recalling a time in your life when you knew without a doubt that God was a part of that. He took care of that for you, whether it be financial, a health issue, you name it. And so this is a time for you guys to think about something, and please feel free to. Could be too private, I don't know, but if it's not, should share that with us, please.
A time whenever God took over for you when things were tough.
Pardon?
A time when God took over for you when things were tough and took care of you.
Oh yeah, I mean there's a lot of different. Well, there are lots of different things, changes in my life, like going from one job to another, that where if this interview didn't work out, that I would be really, okay with it. If I was down about it and got mad about it, how would that help me? And it just kind of destroy you. But there have been times when I have had situations that if I had have gotten that job and that interview, then I wouldn't have ever been really happy. I saw that in the future later on that it would have been a bad thing for me. God knows what's best. And certainly financially, we've been in a bind before with a lot of debt. It was business debt that it seemed like there was a little way out, but God provided through people, ways that it did work out, and it was stressful. That didn't mean it. We didn't have to go through anything. We had to talk through situation. I had to get a lawyer involved in one situation, and pray like crazy. So, but if I hadn't gone through that, I'll just say I wouldn't be in the situation I'm in right now with my time, with my flexibility. I work pretty hard a lot of times. A lot of weeks are very hard, but there's some weeks that I've got a lot of flexibility because I own my own home business, and two businesses that I had to go through a lot to really do. But God is the one that did it, and I was just praying that He would let us have these opportunities, and again I would do it all over again. It was a very hard, stressful time. But I think you could say the same thing if you went through stressful things in your lives. Would you go through that again? And why would you go through it again? I think for some of us, for me, it would be because it made me a better person. It made me more like God. He wants me to be. So share your thoughts. Any time in your life that you knew God was in control of it. He helped you. I know I didn't have as many experiences back in your age with your age, because after you get married, sometimes you have a lot more going on, responsibilities. Michael, come on, I know you've got something.
Well, I was thinking about whenever I was trying to get into MSU, the music program there, the first time, because for my degree I had to audition for it, and so I auditioned. And I didn't make it the first time. I made a few mistakes, and because I was so nervous, and so I was like, maybe I'm not supposed to be here. And then I got an email from them a couple days later, hey, you didn't make it, but we really want you to try again. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I found a a voice teacher, and I was like, hey, I can help with this, and so, I got an email later saying, hey, you don't need to even come in, just send us a video audition, like,
Wow.
which is great, because, you know, you can take as many videos as you want, send them in, and so that's what I did, and I made it, so.
Well, I didn't know the complete story. I knew we had prayed for you during that time.
Yeah, it was
Wow, that's
really
awesome.
stressful, yeah. And it was after I got back from Ecuador too, and so that was just a crazy,
That was.
crazy time, yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's super. Anybody else?
I think about the job I have now, which you know most of the details of this stuff, but some of you may know too, well, you probably don't. But I had interviewed my old school, I was teaching there, and I had this counseling degree, and I just wanted to give it a try and see if I would like counseling instead of teaching, and just a lot of things with teaching were changing, and I kind of wanted to get out of that scene. And anyway, I interviewed for one job, and I thought I was going to get that, and I didn't. And then I just interview after interview, they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, so maybe this isn't right. Maybe God wants me to keep teaching. But the head of the counseling department in Springfield, she just kept calling me back for all these interviews. And I'm like, well, apparently she likes me. And it was just the principals of the buildings that were saying no. And Doug and Sean, they all know, Sean knows all the details, but I don't interview well. I fall apart, I don't know, it's just hard. It's hard. And it's hard for me to brag about myself, and that's what an interview usually is, they want all the good stuff. And anyway, long story short, I ended up at the school I'm at now, and I totally feel like that's where God put me, because I just deal with this very poverty-stricken area in Springfield, and I just feel like God put me there to take care of these kids who, I don't know, nobody else really cares that much about them, but
Yeah. Oh,
anyway.
man. I agree. I know it affected you, and Sean, did it affect you any during that
Big
time?
time, yeah.
Well, I couldn't help but think about that, because sometimes it affects your spouse more than you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's directly at you, but actually your spouse could be more affected because of the way they, handle things, and it's not necessarily right or wrong. It is what it is. Michael's talking about Eric right now. She's affected by those kind of things. Very good. Appreciate you sharing that with us, because I know it affects more than just you even, but it worked out. God just knew the time wasn't right, I believe. That was just wonderful the way it did work out. Anybody else? Bailey, you have anything?
Kind of like Michael, I was looking for a school that had a good equine program, and I looked all over Arkansas, I looked all over Texas, and I couldn't find anything. So I stumbled upon MSU, and at first they were like, oh, your ACT score is not good enough to get in. I was like, okay. So I talked to the dean of agriculture, and me and my mom told them our situation and financial stuff, and it was kind of hard for us to afford it, because I got the in-state tuition, which helped a little bit, but still, we were still kind of struggling with money and stuff. So he's like, okay, let me see what I can do. So I think he kind of helped me a little bit, and God helped me obviously with getting loans and stuff, but yeah.
That's excellent. Very, very good. Our daughter was the oldest of our two children, and when she went into college, we didn't know what we were going to do for helping. My parents blessed my brother and I with paying for our college, and so I wanted, and for the most part, I helped a little bit. I mean, I worked during that time, and I worked in the summers full time and so forth. And I know that's a very, very, very big blessing. Excuse me. So, and some of you didn't get that, and that's just the way it is. You just have to pay it off later on. But that is, it's so neat, to be able to see God kind of help direct and lift that financial burden off. And that's what happened with our daughter. I just couldn't believe the timing on some of the things that happened. Now, she had some different things that, because her, I guess ACT score was part of it, and it was grants, different things. But it was like, wow, I can't believe we're actually able to do this 1 year at a time. We're trying, doing the best we can. And we just felt God was really involved in that situation during those years to help us and her. Anybody else? Noah, you got anything? You got anything, Noah?
Well,
You don't have to feel like you have to. No big deal.
when when me and my parents didn't know that I had autism, it was a kind of a rough start. But I think the Lord guided our hand, my parents' hand, to get me help and figure out what was going on with me because I was having trouble, and it worked out even better because I wasn't the best at being social, and all my socialities were not in the norm, in the way that I could be productive in society. And so it's went from having poor social ability to better social ability, because I still have some problems with being social.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because you have undoubtedly gone through more than most in many situations, especially when you go through school.
Yes.
That's got to be very difficult. And I know God's with your whole family. I know your parents, they're God-fearing people, and they were probably undergoing some sleepless nights.
Maybe sleepless. I didn't ask them.
Wasn't your fault, That's excellent, man. That's powerful, very powerful. God, it's just, it's odd. I see people downtown all the time that they don't have hardly anything, and sadly, they want to put some of the things in their unit they don't need to in this storage unit. But I do think about the stories about the flowers and the birds, different, that He provides all that, and they have provision that, they're not unhealthy looking. They look like they're full, and I hear stories about them getting rained on. I was out last night, blah, blah, blah. I hear them. I feel sorry for them, but it wasn't to the degree of hurting them physically. They didn't freeze to death because they had some shelter, and God provides. And so it teaches me some lessons about how God provides and helps people, even that don't have jobs and so forth. Anybody else? Because if you don't, then I'm probably done with the lesson. I could go on and on probably if I sit here and thought about it enough. But there are times when I can just almost promise you, I felt like God just delivered a check in the mail, and it was like an insurance, rebate or something. Like, where did that come from? We needed that money right then. We needed to make that rent payment or that house payment. How did that happen? And I do still remember, this happened. God did it. And so when you have more and more times in your life that you experience that, it can't help but hope it does build your faith. And again, when God blesses you, that I pray He will, and that you'd have the right attitude and give back, as I know you will.
Doug, when you told, because you would share with me, you and Jill would share with us about you mentioned your financial challenges that you had at one time, and to see you the way that you would talk about those challenges and how you were struggling to make sure that you gave the weight over to God, and that was a challenge for you, but you were trying to do it. One of the things that I probably will always really remember is, number one, your struggle to do that, to try to give it over to God and not hold on to it. And then number two, when everything got worked out, I just felt like, I'm not kidding, like I look at that as sort of how, you know, when we have a success of some kind or something works out, like whenever you share in that with someone and they're struggling to give things over to God and then things work out, you have so much joy. But not only do you have so much joy, it's just a reminder, if you would not have been open to share your challenges there and to share that, you know, no, I'm not a Christian man who I just say I'm going to give it over to God and then all of a sudden everything is fine. You know, that you were comfortable sharing that this is a struggle for me to just let go, to do what I can and then let go and know God's going to take care of us. You sharing that struggle, when everything did work out, it just leaves an impression in my mind. There's few things that are as encouraging for me to let things go and give them over to God than something like that. When you get to witness it, and then things work out, nobody can tell me a story that would leave an impression as much as witnessing that. And it makes me want to give things over to God. But it's really cool, you know, hearing that, and then of course Joe Lee's story, hearing what everybody said. When you trust to give things over to God, and then things work out, boy, those just leave. They do leave like markers in us, don't they?
They do. It's just like I don't know what it is. Your faith right here, let's say, when you start, and all of a sudden, boom. You know, it start building your faith. Mm-hmm. You talk about it, you read about it in the Bible, but until you experience it, sometimes you just don't really have that secure, firm, solid faith that we desire, we all want, and I want that for you guys. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.